Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Ben Helfon. I am the co-author of Our Happy Divorce: How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together. Unfortunately, as it's becoming way too common, I'm not joined with my other co-author, Nikki DiBartolo, but one day she will be here, I promise. But I am joined, as always. Unfortunately, Susan Guthrie couldn't make it tonight, but I am joined by Kate Anthony. Kate is one of the top divorce coaches in the country. She's also the host of the award-winning Divorce Survival Guide podcast. Miss Kate Anthony. Hello, Kate.
Hi, Ben.
How are you?
Hanging in there. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Trying not to let go, but hanging in there.
Exactly.
I just want to give myself kudos because I have not screwed up your podcast name. I think going on a month now.
You know what? You've been doing great, Ben. Kudos. I will give you kudos.
That's right. I already gave myself kudos. But anyways, I'm super excited about our guest tonight. We met through a mutual, one of these things that happens in the space. You got to meet so-and-so, you got to meet so-and-so. And it just so happened that I had been wanting to focus more on kids. I think a lot of the times, or recently, we've been dealing with divorce on adults. And one of the whole premises of our book, obviously, as you know, is that we did it for our son, and we put him first. And amazing, 14 years later, what came out of that. So our guest tonight is COLLEEN LEMAIRE. Colleen launched I Have a Series in 2014 when she searched high and low. For a children's book to help her with her young stepdaughter understand her lifestyle, and came up empty-handed. While there were many resources for adults going through divorce, there were very little for kids. Colleen decided to do something about it. With her very first book, I Have Two Homes. The I Have series was born. There are currently 6 books in the series that cover divorce, remarriage, step-parents, and same-sex partners. Colleen likes to call them kid-friendly stories on grown-up topics. The stories focus on a neutral and loving storyline, use age-appropriate language, and easy-to-understand explanations to help kids cope, feel safe, and strive. She has since branched off and formed Divorce, is on a mission to create, I can't even read. Welcome, Colleen. We're going to get into all this.
Thank you for having me.
Hi,
Colleen.
Hi. Bring her on.
My dyslexia just goes in full effect when I read out loud, so not one of my favorite things to do. But thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So it was about 6 years ago you started I Have Two Homes?
Yes. That was about 6 years ago. I started the series because I had a young stepdaughter at the time, and she kind of thought that everybody had a mom's house and a dad's house. She thought every little kid went back and forth, and it wasn't until she went to preschool and met some other little friends that she realized her lifestyle was a little bit different than others. And she started to ask some tough questions. And I tried to find a children's book that would help her understand her life and why it is the way that it is. And I kind of came up empty-handed. I found a lot of resources for the adults going through the transition of divorce and remarriage. But there was very little for the kids. So I kind of self-taught myself how to publish a book, edit a book, get it out there, get it for sale. And it started kind of just as a hobby for her. And then from there, it's kind of snowballed into more books and more topics to really just help kids who are in quote unquote non-traditional families understand their life and accept it and cope and kind of thrive.
And so how does that happen with the books? Obviously, dealing with adult topics like I talked about in the intro there. But so how do you explain to a kid, or what's the best way to, through your books or in conversation to help kids cope, especially at that age?
Right.
I think your stepdaughter was 3 when you met.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is to keep the explanations age appropriate. And what I mean by that is neutral and loving. And, in my books, nobody's the bad guy, even if it was a horrible divorce and it was clearly one person's fault. Kids don't care about that. They don't care about who wronged who. They don't need to know that. They really don't have the coping skills to process that. So for me, it was really important to use age appropriate language, kind of speak on their level, but also still explain things, not just sweep things under the rug. I'm a big believer that if you don't explain things to kids, oftentimes they're left to their own imaginations to kind of gather their own conclusions. And a lot of the times what they gather is a whole lot scarier or worse than what is actually happening. So if you kind of speak on their level and say, even though mom and dad aren't married anymore, they will always be mom and dad, and nothing can change that. And it just kind of focuses on that underlying theme of you are still loved no matter what. Mom and dad's role of husband and wife is over, but their role as your parents will never come to an end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Do you, when you obviously coach women, or of that tough decision of should they stay or should they go, how do you have them, or is part of that process telling their kids and how to talk to their kids about it? And I know it's age appropriate. We're talking about different ages, but maybe in that younger 3 to 9 sort of range.
Yeah, very exactly what Colleen said. I have a whole divorce survival guide and an actual guide. And one of the first chapters of that is about how to tell your kids. And I recommend getting books. And I love to, now I have this resource to recommend because I think it's really important that they see that they're not the only ones. By the way, I had the same experience, Colleen, as your stepdaughter. When I was growing up, I went to preschool, and my parents split up when I was 11 months old. So I thought everybody's parents lived separately. And I came home from preschool and I was like, Mommy, Damon's parents live together. Why would they do that? Part of her was like, I don't know, kid. Well, I don't know why they do that. But yeah, I think talking about them again in age appropriate terms, but being able to say, I also say that it's become sort of like standard language to say to people, to say to our children, right? Like, mommy and daddy, we're still a family and we still love you and all of those things. But if that's actually not true, don't say it, right? Like, I think it's really important to speak the truth because kids know, man, they pick shit up. They know things. And I think exactly what Colleen said is so important, that we tell them the truth, because they make up stories. They make shit up that can be far worse than the truth. And so if it's really obvious that we're like in contention and that things are terrible in the household, like, address it, say it. You don't have to tell them, but we might get a divorce or anything like that, but just let them know, like, hey, you know what? I know things have been a little, stressful around here, and I'm sure you feel it. And, that way kids are like, oh, okay. So it's not just like, it's not just me, because we want them to be able to trust their own reality. And we want to tell kids the truth. We always want to tell them the truth. We don't want to tell them the whole truth or anything inappropriate, right? But we do want to tell them, we want to validate the experience that they're having.
Yeah. And
go ahead, please.
I was going to say, explaining, the moment of divorce in the children's book, that was a difficult scene to try to illustrate. And I worked with my illustrator a lot on that. And what you were saying, tell them the truth. There's pages in there that say mom and dad are having a hard time getting along.
That's
and
literally what I told my son.
Yeah, they're having a hard time getting along, and they've decided that they will be better parents if they were just friends. And then it talks about the importance of making that decision and following your heart. And when parents decide to do that, that's what you're teaching your kids. You're getting out of an unhappy situation and you're following your heart and you're doing what makes you a better person. And again, it's not just sweeping it under the rug and saying, don't ask those questions, just this is your new life now. You have to explain it on their level with the underlying theme of it's okay. This didn't work out, but it's okay and you're going to be okay.
Yes.
I don't have the images in front of me. Can you talk about that? I guess it's kind of hard to talk about an illustration, but that page that you sort of went back and forth and what it looks like in the book.
Yeah, so the book starts out with, mommy and daddy had a baby and they brought it home from the hospital and they're taking care of it. And then it talks about as time went on, mom and dad had a hard time getting along. And the way we showed that was it's just the mom and the dad. They're kind of standing back to back with their arms crossed. Nobody's screaming at each other. Nobody's yelling. That may be happening in real life, but I didn't really want to illustrate that scary side of it. It's just they're having a hard time getting along and they're kind of pouting and they're back to back. And then the next page shows the importance of following your heart. And if you change your mind, that's okay. And it talks about the character, the little girl. One day she decides her favorite color is red, and the next day she decides it's blue. And sometimes I change my mind, and my mom and dad have shown me that that's okay to do. And then it literally shows mom and dad in two separate houses. They live in two separate houses. And from there, it kind of talks about the pros of having two houses and how the character gets special time with mom and special time with dad, and that they love her so much that they share her and they do special things with her. And then going from there, like, again, it just has the underlying theme that even though they're not husband and wife, they're always going to be mom and dad.
And I think the one thing that my son Asher was around the same age that you were, or not, that your stepdaughter was when Nikki and I got divorced. And looking back on it and going through the process of writing the book, one thing we did not, I think, do is give him enough credit for being aware, and sort of, tried to do what felt like the right thing, right? But looking back on it, he was much more aware of what was going on than we gave him credit for. And I think that, the one thing that Kate said is the actions, at the end of the day, that explanation is great, but it sort of has to be backed up, by some actions and some real, again, if it's in the book and then the kids see in real life that the parents are, going at each other's throat or talking bad about each other, it sort of flies in the face of, I guess, what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. And that was another reason behind my books too. Like they don't just help kids understand, but sometimes parents just don't know what to say. They don't know what to say. They're too stuck in the emotions of it. And I think divorce with kids is one of the hardest things anybody can go through. And it's really hard to leave those negative emotions at the door when you're talking to your kids sometimes. So I hope that not only do my books help the kids understand, but they kind of provide a script or a starting point for the adults as a reminder to them, hey, keep the conversation appropriate, keep it neutral, don't badmouth the other spouse, because that other spouse is half of them. That child is half of them. So if you're doing that, you're only hurting the kid.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea behind every conversation I think we had with our son, from whether, when he figured out that I wasn't sleeping at the house, even though I thought I was getting up every morning, coming there early from the hotel, but he figured out because my side of the bed wasn't, ruffled, and he asked me where I slept. So I think every conversation at the beginning with Asher was instigated by him. Daddy, where'd you sleep last night? And we're gonna have that conversation now. And a lot more to when we're dating somebody else to, but one of the things that I love what you said about helping adults just reminds me of, so I was tasked with by Nikki having the birds and the bee conversation with Asher. And there's a book that my parents read me, I think from the late 70s, early 80s called Where Did I Come From? You remember that book?
That had the cutouts.
Yes.
They were like almost like cutout illustrations. And then like the mom and the dad were in bed together and they were like, oh my God, I love that book. Mom and dad would go a little hard, and feel good and all, but that's all I knew, so I had to read him. So I went and found the book from the 70s and read him the book, but it helped, like, to be, to your point, Colleen, it helped me
as a parent, have that tough conversation. I mean, it's not even that tough. I mean, but it is for me because I'm emotionally challenged. But regardless, the book helped, and I wish that we had a tool like your books when we were, going through the process. One of the things that I read, first of all, not only are the books great, but her website is filled with the information. The I Have series.com, is that correct?
Yes, the I Have series. All the books start with I Have, so it's called the I Have series.com.
And your blogs are phenomenal, and they're a great resource for step parents, for parents. Moving into the step parenting realm, one of your blogs I read said being a stepmom comes with a blurry and always changing life description, difficult coworkers, and very little recognition. Can you speak to that?
Oh boy. Yes. So I would confidently say being a stepmom has been the hardest thing I have ever done. It's been the most rewarding, but it's been extremely challenging. What I mean by difficult coworkers, most people that come into another child's life in a step parent role, there's a natural counterpart to their role. So, my stepdaughter, she doesn't need another mom. She has a mom who's active in her life. She also has a stepdad as well. So she has 4 parents. And that acceptance of a step parent can go really well or really bad. And a lot of that can be dictated by the biological parents. Like you said, kids are smart. They pick up on things. If mom is not accepting of stepmom, or if dad is not accepting of stepdad, kids can feel that. And I know we've experienced personally, and I know a lot of other people, that kids have experienced something called loyalty binds, where they feel like if they would love their stepmom, that means they love their mom less. And it's really important to correct that misunderstanding, that just because you love one doesn't mean that takes away from the other. It's just more people to love. And over the years, I mean, I've been doing this, I've been helping raise her for almost 10 years now. It's come with its ups and downs. Obviously a lot of times in the beginning, it's hard to accept another woman in your child's life or another man. I think we've come a long way. I think my stepdaughter has come a long way in kind of navigating the waters of what a step parent is, and also more importantly, what they are not. I'm not here to replace, I'm only here to add. As far as the recognition, I'm a big believer in, she has a mom and a dad, and they deserve that role. They deserve Mother's Day and Father's Day. I'll never be with my stepdaughter on Mother's Day. And I think that's okay. I don't think I should be with her. She should be with her mom. That's her special day. We do our own, we actually celebrate Stepmother's Day the weekend after. So we have our own little, she makes me breakfast in bed, and, she recognizes me in different ways. But then even also going back to school functions or recitals, and step parents, they take a back seat for those. They're out of the spotlight. And for me, I'm okay with that. But I know a lot of step parents aren't. They want that recognition, and it can be hard to be asked to unconditionally love a child and be there and fold the laundry and to make the school lunches, and and not have that type of, I guess, outer recognition of that. And it can take many people years to kind of cope with that and understand and really appreciate the special role that you have as a stepmom. I'll never be her mom, but I wear the title of stepmom very proud. And there are things and bonds and, inside jokes and connections I have with her that her mom will never have, and vice versa. I think each person brings a unique set of qualities to her life.
If Susan were here, I think one of the greatest, she was 6 years old or younger, triplets.
I think they were younger.
They might have been younger, but she took the role of the benevolent aunt, right? And sort of the switching the roles and taking the good of being everything the parent can be without sort of, the negative and the conflict. So that's the tack she took. Susan, I don't know if you, Susan, Kate, if there's anything you want to add to what Colleen said.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think it is really hard balance for the stepmom. Like, where do I fit in? And it's also hard for the bio mom, right? Like, it takes like you said, like a little while to like, I have a lot of women in my Facebook group or clients who were like, and her, their stepmom bought them presents for their birthday, and how dare she? And I'm like, dude, thank her. You've got someone in your kid's life that loves them. They're not trying to compete with you. They're just showing love. It's more, like you said, Colleen, I always say the same thing. It's more people to love your kids. And as long as that relationship is clear, and it is clear in the children's hearts, right? I mean, I know that some kids feel that loyalty bind that you talked about, but that's really on us as parents and step-parents to, help them sort of navigate, right? And it's our job. It's my job as a mom. I give my son's stepmother a Mother's Day card every year because
that's awesome.
She parents with us, right? Like, she's there. She cooks dinner for my kid, 3.5, 4 days a week, depending on the week, like, absolutely. And so, I think it's really important to, it's our job as parents to sort of set the tone for what that relationship can be. And it can be a really special relationship as long as we help our children to foster that dynamic and don't make them feel like they're having to choose, right? One of the things that I used to love when I was little, my mom used to always, we still talk about it to this day. We call them the buckets of love. And all of us gets a bucket, right? And it's full of love. And love comes out of the bucket to go to somebody, but it's always being filled. It's always, no matter everything that comes out of the bucket, it's it's a faucet with a hole, a hole in it, whatever, you know what I mean? A bucket with a hole in a faucet. You can never diminish the amount of love that's in a bucket, and it goes for everybody in the whole world, right? Anyone you choose to love. And I love that sort of it helped me a lot as a child. And we still talk about it in my family. The buckets of love your bucket of love never gets emptied, ever. You can use that. In your
I will. Everything I say, nothing I say is original. So let's just throw that out there. One of your blogs is about 3 things a step parent should never do.
Oh gosh.
Ooh.
That was from a long time. Let me try to remember what I wrote.
When people do that.
One of them, it's definitely trying to replace, trying to be the mom or be the dad, just because that's never going to go over well. You should never try to be something you're not. And like I said, stepmoms and stepdads have their own unique roles. So kind of embrace that. It's a great role to have. I know one of them was forcing the kids to call you mom or dad. Yeah. I know a lot of stepmoms, I would say women in particular, they love that endearing title of mom, and they would love it if their stepkids called them mom. When my stepdaughter was very little, she asked me if she could, and I told her no. I said that was a very special word meant for one person, and only one person. Now that's what works for our family. And I say that as a disclaimer because there are other families where that might work for them to call both parents mom and both parents dad, and it might not bother each other. But in my experience, more often than not, those are very sacred titles that should be meant for one person and one person only. And then I think the last advice I had was to take the kids' lead on a lot of things. There's no really guideline on how to be a stepmom or stepdad or single mom or single dad. Kind of take their lead. If they seem uncomfortable, then back off a little bit. I was very aware of that in the beginning, that I wasn't always there You know, I knew my stepdaughter needed time with just her dad, and I didn't need to be there all the time. Made sure that they had special time to do silly things. You know, she was very young. This is all she's ever known, which is, I think, more of a good thing than a bad thing. You know, they got divorced when she was very little, which was unfortunate, but the good side of it is she doesn't really have memories of them being together. So this is kind of all she's ever known. So when I talk to other step parents who are just starting out in their role as a stepmom or stepdad, I say, you know, take the lead from the kids. If they are giving you signals loud and clear, like, hey, you're here too much, we're not ready for this, you know, kids have no problem expressing themselves. Maybe back off a little bit. Definitely do not monopolize their biological parent, because they miss them greatly when they are not there. Their life has been cut in half. So just be aware of that, and make sure that they still get that special time.
Yeah, one of the other ones, and I didn't mean to throw that, because I actually hate when people do that, bring up.
Oh, that's okay.
We have stuff on our blog, you know, doing a podcast, and somebody will bring up, you know, 5 tips that we wrote, you know, 2 years ago. But one of the things you said is don't speak ill of the other parent or you know, household. And I think, can you speak on that and the importance of that?
Oh, I think speaking ill of the other parent is the number one worst thing you can do, and you're setting yourself up for disaster.
And that's just not step parenting. You know, that might be from a step parent's perspective, but also, you know, as
any
you know,
parent.
The parent, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot, that, you know, everybody has a mom and a dad, and that's a fierce loyalty there. You cannot change that. You shouldn't try to change that. I don't care if you think the other parent is one of the worst parents in the world. That does not matter. It's not the kid's business to know your thoughts and feelings on that. If you need to vent, then you do that with your adult friends or your spouse or your parents. You do not drag the kids into that mess, because first of all, I mean, even scientifically speaking, their brains are not developed to even cope with that sort of turmoil or conflict. They don't know how to process that.
And that's not age appropriate. I mean, I'll just tell you, somebody who grew up in a high conflict divorce, like, that's not, it doesn't become a certain age where you can, you know, get a pass to talk bad about the other, you know, the other parent. And it's a terrible place to be. You know, it's like literally feeding your kids poison, you know, and hoping that the other partner dies. I mean, as dramatic as that sounds, believe me, I grew up in it. And it is a toxic, you know, terrible thing to grow up in. And Kate?
Yep, same.
Yeah.
I grew up in that, and same. Really, really damaging. And, you know, it can be really difficult. I mean, I deal with this a lot in my work, is it can be really difficult when the other parent or the other home actually is a toxic environment, right? Yeah. And the child comes home and, like, is confused about what's going on at the other parent's house, or, you know, whatever. It's still, I mean, it's a hard road. It's a hard, like, path. It's a narrow, hard path to walk. But there's still things that you can say that just sort of skirt the issue, and that validate, you know, again, we talked about, like, validating their experience, right? Validating the kid's experience without trash talking the other parent. It's super important. But especially in step parenting, I think that's just, you know, absolutely.
So from a coach's standpoint, you're saying, what are some actual words to validate that you might suggest people use, Kate, instead of, you know, the negative toxicity?
Well, I mean, I think that anytime you validate someone's experience, I mean, using their own words is, like, the most comforting thing that you can do, right? So if they come home and say, like, something happened, or I feel this, then just validating that, saying, I understand, like, that must be really frustrating, or that must be, you know, really confusing. I'm so sorry that happened. I mean, there are times when I have been able to say to my son, like, you know what, I'll talk to Dad about that, because I think he needs a champion or someone to, you know, go to bat for him. But I also have an ex who's open and amenable to that, right? If he's done something that's upset my son. But if it's, like, a super toxic environment, and they are, the best thing you can do is validate their experience and then give them tools and words to advocate for themselves, because you are probably the last person in a super toxic environment. You're the last person that should go in and try to fix it, because you have this toxic bond with this person.
Well, you're conflicted, right? A lawyer would go.
They're not going to hear it from you. You are
Right.
not going to do any better. Right? You're not going to help. So to give your kids, say, what words do you think you might be able to use when you have that feeling? It, again, age dependent, right? When you have that feeling, what do you think would be helpful to be able to say at this time, or give them words that or you think would be helpful. I know that there have been times when my son has had conflict with his dad where I've said to him as he's gotten older, what's really worked for me with dad, because I know dad, right? And I'll say, one of the things that really works for me with dad is X. And then he'll be like, oh yeah, that's smart. That's good. Right. And he'll go and use that and it'll work. So I think, yes, I think addressing it and letting them know that you're there and that you understand and you empathize, and then giving them tools, giving them the ability to advocate for themselves. That's a lifelong tool that they're going to need anyway, right?
So, as the spectrum, I guess, of divorce is there's the divorce and there's having that conversation with the kids, but then there's, bringing the Colleen's into the world, into the picture, and then you have another series of books is I have a stepmom and I have a stepdad. Do they go into sort of the introduction process and the right ways to introduce, or how kids, this is from a parent standpoint, obviously, but maybe first talk about how you were introduced to your stepdaughter and how that went, and if you could go back, and is that experience in the book or changed and done differently?
Well, the first time I met my stepdaughter, she stabbed me with a fork.
Awesome.
And then the second time I met her, she called me mommy. So luckily we found a happy medium between those two events.
That's hilarious.
Those books, they definitely talk about, what a step-parent is and helps define it. And it's so funny that you just said, bringing Colleen's into the picture. My stepdaughter, when she was little, another thing that sparked these books for me was she thought she would use my name like that as a proper noun. This is my Colleen. Where's your Colleen? Do you have a Colleen? And, she thought that was the word for stepmom. That's just all she knew. So that's really, again, another reason why I wanted to write these, to help her learn the language on how to introduce me. And there's a scene directly for that in the book, how to introduce your step-parent to your friends in the neighborhood. This is my stepmom, Colleen. And then the other characters saying, this is my stepdaughter, Cassidy, just teaching them those words, because they don't hear those words on a daily basis. The media, I think, is catching up a little bit with representing non-traditional families, but it's definitely not equal yet. The book talks about, daddy or mommy falling in love, and they've decided to get married, and it has a scene from the wedding. Talks about the importance, I know I touched on this earlier, but the importance of getting silly time with just the biological parent. The little characters in the book, they talk about getting special time with mom and dad, and then special time as their new family and what they do together and new traditions that they are making. And then it kind of ends with their stepmom and stepdad being there for her and helping raise her, and kind of the things that they bring to the table. Again, just silly things on a kid's level. My stepmom's really good at painting my nails, and my stepdad is really good at playing board games. Just kind of focusing on what these new characters in their life are bringing into their life to enrich it.
Kate, is there, when you talk about practicality and the books, obviously everybody has their own experience, and we've talked about it a couple times on the stream and on your podcast, and about the introduction of Nadia and Chad, and where are some things that people go wrong. I don't know if there's a perfect template, but there are definitely things that can go wrong that you see.
I think there are two things that we can really get wrong. One is to introduce a new partner too quickly. And then the other is to wait too long. And, when we introduce someone too quickly, that relationship may not work out, and that's a problem, right? That's when you end up with the rotating door.
Right.
When you introduce someone, when you wait too long, you're sort of plopping a child into a very established relationship that can feel really weird to them. But also more than that, kids need time to get used to the other person as well. So I remember when I was first dating after divorce, and I was dating a guy, and it was like 7 months and I hadn't met his kids, and I was like, I don't know you. Like there was only so far the relationship could go, because I didn't know him as a dad and he didn't know me as a mom. And, that's a huge part of my identity. So you're kind of playing pretend when you wait. His therapist was like, you should wait until you get engaged. And I was like, would you propose to me if I hadn't met your kids? Because I don't think I would accept a proposal from you if I hadn't met your kids and seen what you're like as a dad. I don't know you all the way. And he was like, oh shit, that's true. Like,
right.
What, so, I also have a client who's, I think I've told this story before. I have a client whose ex-husband got remarried and didn't introduce their son to the new woman until the wedding day.
What?
And the kid's like, who is this person, right? The kid has no chance to like get to know this person and build a relationship with this person. He's literally like, here's your stepmom, which is insane, right? So there's a balance to this. There's definitely a balance. And I think it's a balance for the children and also for you in the relationship. Again, I was like, I don't know you. I can't make decisions about whether I want to have a future with you if I don't know everything that comes along with that,
Right.
So
yeah. So Colleen, when the positives, right? I mean, I think that one of the things, and I think it was in one of your blogs, you talk about the look. Nobody signs up for divorce when they get married, right? It's not something that we premeditate. It happens, and it's how we deal with it after it happens. But there are some positives that can come out from showing kids and your stepdaughter who met you at a young age about a healthy relationship with your stepkids, but more importantly, a healthy relationship with her dad, and what benefits that, or what positives can come out of that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think divorce with kids is one of the most traumatic things anybody can ever go through. And I will say, and my husband will probably be one of the first ones to say too, that he is a much better spouse to me than he was in his first marriage. And he's a much better dad now than he was 10 years ago. Going through that just horrible situation has really made him appreciate family and having a bond with his daughter, and having a healthy marriage. And for me, that's the biggest silver lining of going through a divorce, because it teaches you kind of the effort that's required to hold on to that sanctity of marriage. And I think that's one of the big reasons why he has been able to move on and have such a happy and successful relationship with me, because he recognized that. Some people go through a divorce and they never move away from pointing the finger, and it's always the other person's fault. And here's all the things that they did wrong, and I was so innocent. It can be hard to look at yourself and say, you know what, I didn't treat her well, or I didn't treat him well, and this is what I did wrong in the marriage. And in the beginning of our relationship, as most people are, you're curious about past relationships. We had a lot of conversations about how could your marriage unravel? What went wrong? And what really impressed me was he talked about his own shortcomings. He talked about what he thought he did wrong, and kind of these little, I call them, I think in the blog, I call them his little snowflakes that just snowballed into the downfall of their relationship. And then he touched on hers, but he talked, he pointed the finger at himself first. And I could tell that he had grown so much, and he had learned what to do and what not to do in a marriage, and what hurts it and what helps it. And also as a dad. So if you can take the horrible, outcome of a divorce and kind of use it as a learning experience, I think that's probably only one of the best things you can do. And that can take time. For some people, they are so intertwined in their emotions that they just can't even see straight. It can take years and years and years before you're ready to really look at yourself and see what maybe you did wrong, and kind of accept your new life and your kids' new life and who's going to be coming into their life. One of my favorite phrases is, how somebody treats you is more about them than it is you. So if you have a biological mom or dad that is just treating you horrible and you're not welcome in their child's life, that's more about them. They are still hurting. They have not processed their divorce. They have not healed. They might probably feel threatened, especially if you're a decent person. If you're a great person that the kids like, that could just trigger them to just be super unhappy and want to be territorial. And it can take a long time to kind of look at yourself and learn those hard lessons and try to see the good that came out of your divorce, both as an individual and as a spouse and as a parent.
Well, first of all, I know Kate wants to jump in there because I know she has some pearls. But Susan's watching. Susan, hi. We love you. We miss you.
I saw your message. We love you and miss you.
Second, what it sounds to me about your husband is that he is what we call and what we strive for and hope for is an evolved man, and somebody who wasn't, who had the courage to change, look, women have their own issues, and that's why, I think it's 65% of second marriages end in divorce, is because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So the good that comes out of divorce, when at least for men, go and do the work, is a better second marriage, and a better parent, and most importantly, a better parent by showing your kids what a healthy, happy relationship can look like. And I think that's the silver lining, at least for me and my experience, is, our son gets to not see one healthy relationship, but he gets to see two, and what they look like and what that looks like.
And gets to see three. He gets to see, Chad and Nikki, and you and Nadia, and then, you and Nikki.
Right.
Like there's lots of different relationships that he gets to see that are amazing, Yeah.
And Kate, you can probably speak to what Colleen was talking about the doing the work. We talk about it a lot.
We do talk about it a lot, and it's 100% true. I mean, it's 67% of second marriages, 74% of third marriages end in divorce because we're not doing the work. We're trading out the spouse. We're 67.
She corrected me.
Because we're not, people aren't doing the work, and we're not looking at what happened. And I agree with you 100%, Colleen. My situation was pretty volatile, and my ex will say now, like, I treated you, I was a shitty husband. I was a shitty husband. And I watch him with his current wife, and I'm like, you are so much nicer to her than you ever were to me. And I'm grateful that our kids that are raised in that environment rather than the toxic environment that we had, because that was not going to happen. That change was not going to happen in our marriage because our dynamic was way too volatile and toxic on both of our ends. Like it was a combustible, baking soda and vinegar, right? And there's nothing wrong with baking soda and there's nothing wrong with vinegar. If you mix vinegar with oil, it's quite lovely, right? If you put baking soda in a cake, it's also quite lovely. You put baking soda and vinegar together, it's terrible,
right.
you know? So that's sort of the way that I feel about it. And we have to do the work. We have got to do the work so that our kids can get raised in better environments. But when we keep saying it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's just all him, and we don't do the growth work on ourselves, we guarantee that our kids are going to get put in that same situation over and over and over again. And it's bad for kids.
So I've been waiting, holding on to this question since for the end, and it's a blog I came across of yours that I didn't read because I wanted to get the answer, on the stream live. But the title of it is "Why It Is Important to Gross Out Your Kids." Please tell me why it is important to gross out my kids and how that looks.
So I wrote that to piggyback off actually what we just said. It goes back to showing your kids what a healthy relationship looks like. My stepdaughter's parents got divorced when she was very young, and I don't think either of them want her growing up thinking that living separately is what a healthy marriage is. So my husband and I we are very romantic. We hold hands in front of her. We kiss, we hug, now that she's 12, she'll roll her eyes and be like, "You guys are gross. Can you please stop?" But it's important to show them, kids that have divorced parents, hey, this is what a healthy marriage looks like. This is what love looks like as spouses. It's not always, you don't always end up split up. It's a possibility, and kids of divorce are very aware of that. But I think it's really important to show them what healthy love is. So don't hold back. Well, let me back up a little bit. Hold back in the beginning. Make sure that the kids are comfortable. I was very aware of that. I still let her, be daddy's little girl. And when I started to come around, I let, small things, like I let her still sit next to him, watching a movie. I let her hold his hand, when we went for a walk. You still have to kind of come in lightly. But then when you're an established couple, and you're part of your stepkid's family, it's important to show them a healthy love and teach them this is what a healthy love looks like. And it can be one of the most beautiful things. I know that some spouses are very, step parents might feel that it's being either inappropriate or they don't want to make the kids uncomfortable. But to me, I think it provides almost security. I think my stepdaughter enjoys seeing that love between us. It does make her giggle and make her laugh and makes her feel safe that we have such a strong marriage. She sees that every day. She sees her dad make my coffee. She sees me, kiss him good morning. She sees us hold hands. She sees, how strong our union is. And I'm hoping that's teaching her to want that for herself and to accept really nothing less. I think everybody deserves a strong love like that. Somebody that has your back, that's always there for you. And kids of divorce might be some of the ones that need a living, breathing example of that the most.
Amen to that.
Yeah, it's so, one of the things I talk about in the book, my experience is, like I said, I was older when my parents got divorced in 13. But I can't, except for one occasion, remember my parents showing any PDA, any, public displays, except for one occasion I saw them holding hands. And I was like, I think I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, but it was earth shattering. It was shaped, it was like, it was ingrained in my head. So those little things stick, again, to the theme of not giving our kids enough credit. Those little things, at least were implemented and imprinted in my head. And my wife, Nadia, always talks about the importance of, showing kids and being more affectionate, which, I struggle with sometimes. But, it's important to show our kids and Asher what that looks like. I know Chad and Nikki do a much better job. but I love the title of the blog. And so I just want to go ahead and show the I have a series .com is the website. Is that correct?
Yes, I have series.com. The first couple books, the first book helps explain divorce, and the next two books help explain step parents. They're called I Have a Stepmom and I Have a Stepdad. And then from there, I've branched out again, kind of into other modern day families. I have two moms and I have two dads, which represent kids that have same-sex parents. And then I was actually in the middle of writing. I have a sibling with special needs, and I have a guardian angel to help explain death of a loved one. I was in the middle of writing those when COVID-19 came. So I put those on pause to hurry up and write and publish the sixth book, which is called I Have to Stay Home. And that helps explain the pandemic. And I truly feel that kids are some of the ones that have had their lives disrupted the most throughout this whole thing. And we know that kids crave routine. They like to know what's happening. They like to know what's coming up. They have their schedule, naps, daycare, school. That's all been taken from them. People are wearing masks. They're hearing words like pandemic and virus and vaccine, things that they don't have probably never heard before. So the latest book is really helping explain what's going on in the world around them. And it's the first book that's available in both ebook and paperback, and it's also in 5 languages.
Wow.
So that is out there. And
where can people find the books, buy the books, find you on social media besides I have a series.com?
Yeah, so they're on the ihaveseries.com, and then they're also on Amazon. So you can either search by my last name or the title.
And then your socials?
My social, I'm on Facebook. That's under the I Have series, and as well as Instagram, the I Have series.
Well, I need to keep this to under an hour. Otherwise, Kate and Susan send me a bill for overtime. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, and your books are great. I wish they were around when I was going through my divorce, but it's funny because you said about the parents helping the parents, and all I could think about before you even said it was, this would have been great for me, right? But also for the kids, at least for us emotionally challenged males. But thank you very much for joining us. And now, as always, Kate and Susan, my computer's so slow, can be found on your screen. The best lawyer and the best mediator, I should say, and the best coach there is. And their podcasts, the Divorce and Beyond podcast and the Divorce Survival Guide podcasts, are 2 of the best in the business. And then we can be found at Everything Our Happy Divorce. Thank you. Happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever your deal is. And we won't be here next week, but we'll be here sometime in the near future, anytime.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out somehow. Colleen, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you guys. Happy holidays again.